Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Let's do names because we always forget.
John.
Joe.
Great.
Yeah, good.
Well done.
Good way
Welcome
to
back
do it. Welcome. Thank you.
to the pod.
This week, what we're looking at?
Well, trust, really.
Okay, cool.
A story you can trust.
Yeah, so we've been looking through the Bible, we've been looking through the Book of Mark,
Yes.
and looking at a different theme each week.
Yes. Each of them starting with a story, ...
Okay.
which really is code for Jesus.
Ah.
Don't you
good.
think?
A story you can trust this week, then.
Yes.
And I thought, let's start off, see if you can trust me. We'll find out. And I've got 5 facts for you.
5 facts.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I want you to see whether you think these are facts that you believe to be true, or whether you think I've made them up.
I see.
It's just true or false is what I'm saying.
So whether or not I can trust what you're saying is
Yeah.
true.
But it is just true or
I
false.
see. Oh, okay.
And these 5 facts have also gone along the theme of trust.
Yeah.
They're all to do with things that people trust.
Okay.
Let's go for the first one and you'll
I'm
see.
intrigued.
So the first one here.
Mm-hmm.
The term padlock originated in the 15th century. Do you trust that is true, or do you trust that is false?
Oh, that's very funny. Right, padlock.
Padlock.
15th century.
People trust them.
I'm going to say it's true.
Yeah, well done.
Is it?
Yeah, a little fact for you here.
Old.
The term padlock is a combination of the Old English words pad and lock. Educational. Next one, PIN numbers, yeah?
PIN numbers, yeah.
You only tell PIN numbers to people you very, very trust.
Do
Actually,
you tell them to anyone?
yeah, that's true. Don't tell them to anyone.
I forgot my PIN number a couple of months ago. Do you remember?
Yeah,
You were with me.
Yeah. But you did remember it.
I did remember it, but that was my miracle. I prayed. I asked God, help me.
And you remembered?
Yeah.
Well,
Because they only give you 3 chances, don't they, before they block your card?
I always remember mine, so I'm okay. The fact I've got here, or not fact, is 1 in every 10 people have the PIN number 1, 2, 3, 4.
Ah,
That's their PIN.
yeah, easily. Yes,
So
true.
that's 10% of people.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's
yeah.
shocking, isn't
Someone
it?
did some research. They didn't hack into everyone's PIN numbers, don't worry. But they did a bit of research and found that is 10% of people have that.
So if they did research, presumably they just asked people, and then they could have responded yes or no. So do you even trust the data? Really?
Do I trust my own facts here? Next one. It's a very good point. Next one is sat-navs. People trust sat-navs.
Well,
Apart
some
from
of us
you.
don't.
Because you're an analog man.
I am.
You write
I-
your directions down,
yeah.
don't you?
I love an A to Z. You know, I see it as a personal challenge. Can I drive to my destination without having to look it up on my phone?
Anyway, sat-navs.
Yeah, sat-navs.
Oh, you're saying I don't trust you because you'd be driving without a sat-nav is what I'm saying. So trust
Oh.
me because I drive with a sat-nav.
You don't trust my driving?
Not anymore. 38.5% of people in the UK use their phone as a sat-nav.
Yeah.
And in Ireland, 60% of people use their phone as a sat-nav.
That's very random.
Yeah.
30-something.
38.5%.
Sure, yes, it's true. Let's say it's true.
Yeah.
Is it true?
You trust in me? It's true. Yeah, yeah.
Surprised it's not
Google.
more than that, actually.
Yeah, same. A phrase we hear a lot.
Okay.
Trust me, I'm a doctor. Yeah? This one's pretty weak, but there are over 1 million doctors in the United States of America. Is that true or false?
Over 1 million doctors.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in the States.
Yeah, you've got it. Let's
Great.
move on.
Okay.
Something that we all have to trust in life is deodorant and antiperspirant. And sure, I came up with the tagline, it won't let you down. Sure, it won't let you down.
Okay.
The fact is, deodorant was originally designed for wet dogs to stop the smell.
What, is that true or false?
Yeah.
No, I don't think that's true.
Yeah, okay, you caught me. That one's not true.
It's not for. It wasn't meant for wet dogs.
No, it was.
What was it designed for?
For humans, surprisingly.
Okay.
So there we go. 5 trust-worthy things, and you got 5 out of 5.
Thank you.
Well done.
I don't sweat very much either. They were very creative facts.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you.
impressed with you.
Right, let's look in the Bible.
Bible.
What we got?
We've got Jesus.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise. Doing a couple of miracles.
Yeah. So we're looking in Mark 5 today.
Yeah. So we've actually skipped about 1.5 chapters since the last passage.
Okay.
Just so we're all aware.
Good. And yeah, this one we're going
Yeah.
to hear about 2 miracles
Yes.
that Jesus performs. And we're going to look at the theme of trust within this passage as well.
Yeah.
So if I read it, and then we'll go through it
Okay.
part by part.
Great.
So this is Mark 5, verse 21. So when Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered round him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed round him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, "If I touch his clothes, I will be healed." Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once Jesus realized that power had gone from him. He turned round in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciples answered, "and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." While Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead," they said. "Why bother the teacher any more?" Overhearing what they said, Jesus told him, "Don't be afraid, just believe." He did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion with people crying and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead but asleep." But they laughed at him. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him and went where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. And at this they were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this and told them to get her something to eat. So we've got a couple of miracles there.
Yes.
Let's start from the start then. So we've got Jesus, and he's got a large crowd around him.
Yes. They're following him. They gathered. He's on a boat, and there's a crowd that's gathered. So he's becoming more and more well known.
Yeah, so
more popular.
We've had him teaching before with large crowds around him.
Yeah.
And
I imagine this is larger. It's getting bigger and bigger.
Because people are hearing about him.
The last couple of passages that we read were him doing some more healings, some miracles. And that attracts, I mean, it's entertaining if nothing else.
So people are hearing about healings going on. People
Yeah.
are hearing about his miracles.
Yeah.
They've come to hear him speak, to see him.
What is a miracle?
Good question. Something that no one can do.
Yeah, that's good.
Or something that can't be done.
Yeah, I like that.
So when Jesus performs a miracle, he's doing something that no one can do.
It shouldn't be able to be done even,
Yeah.
should it? It doesn't
Something you
obey.
would say is impossible.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like that. So obviously that would attract attention.
Yeah.
The more he does it and the more he teaches as well, the more his reputation goes ahead of him.
Yeah.
And actually we see with Jairus, this is the name of the guy who was one of the leaders of the synagogue. Verse 22, Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so she'll be healed and live." So he's never met Jesus, but he's heard about Jesus.
And he trusts that Jesus will do something to heal his daughter.
I suppose when you're at that point of desperation, you've got nowhere else to turn to.
Yeah, and he's pleading.
Yeah, and you hear about this guy who we've already looked at in the first passage that we read of Mark, how he is the Messiah, the Christ, the Son of God. So, of course, you turn to someone like that.
Definitely. So this is sort of two stories crossing over. So we've got Jairus at the start.
Yeah.
Asking Jesus, pleading Jesus to come and heal.
Yeah, and then the second one is on the way. As Jesus is going to Jairus' house, this other miracle happens.
So he's on his way to Jairus' house, large crowd around him, and then Jesus walking along, large crowd, and he feels someone touch his clothes.
It's a woman who has been ill for 12 years, it says, and it says subject to bleeding for 12 years. I think there are a couple of things that might be worth pointing out there. In the Hebrew Bible, which is the Old Testament, the number 12 symbolizes God's power, God's authority. And we see in these stories that the woman's bleeding for 12 years. The girl is 12 years old. Jesus has the power and authority over the ill health, over death. But then the other thing worth pointing out is this woman's bleeding, and I'm trying to think how to say this concisely. In the Israelites' way of dealing with God, from the very first few books of the Bible, certain things, certain actions or states of being, if you like, would not allow them access to God. It works differently for us now because we live post Jesus, right? But one of the things that would get in the way of people having access to God is blood. So blood is seen as the life of an animal or of a human, because it's, what keeps people alive, what keeps things alive. Yeah, there's a verse in Leviticus 17, for the life of a creature is in the blood. So if you're bleeding, or if you spill blood on the ground, that represents loss of life, it's dying. And if God is life, because God breathes life into the human in Genesis, if there's spilled blood or bleeding, that represents a barrier to God. There's an uncleanness there. God cannot have contact with what is impure, right? Because God is pure and the two can't mix. So for this woman to have been bleeding for 12 years, she basically like a walking zombie, if you like. She's like walking death. And you've got this woman who essentially represents death, and then the girl who is dead.
Yeah.
And in both cases, Jesus, who remember is God and fully perfect and fully pure, physically interacts with these unclean people that are deemed unclean. I mean, just to jump ahead to the little girl, if we look at verse 41, Jesus took her by the hand. The girl's dead. Touching a dead body, that rendered you unclean because you're in contact with death. So Jesus, who is God, shouldn't be touching these things or interacting with these things because that would make him unclean.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, he gives life because he gives the woman health, and he restores life to the girl. And so he restores them to a state of being that is clean, if you like.
Yeah, and it says in verse 29, immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt she was freed from her suffering at that immediate point.
Yeah.
And we've got that just from her touching Jesus' cloak. Now, do you think that she would know that if she just touched Jesus' clothes, that she'd be healed? Or is there something,
that's interesting,
something more to that?
I reckon she didn't know. Well, it says she's been bleeding for 12 years, and this is verse 26. She'd suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all that she had, so she'd got no money left. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. So can you imagine? You spend 12 years of your life, and not just 12 years, but all your life savings on doctors, different medical things to try and heal you, and nothing works. I think she's just desperate.
Yeah.
In the same way as Jairus is desperate and he just falls at Jesus' feet and pleads with him, I think she's like, hey, I've got no hope. I hear that there's this guy who can heal people. I'm just going to give it a shot.
Yeah.
And, there's the crowds. She doesn't even get the chance to touch Jesus himself or speak to him. She just touches his coat. I think she just sort of thinks, if there's a shot, then I'm going to give it a shot.
And it works.
And it works. And I think that's sort of okay.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not she thought Jesus is God or if there was some sort of superstitious thing going on. So even for us, even if our theology, our understanding of God isn't completely spot on, which, let's face it never will be because we're never going to really truly understand God, we can still be healed. We can still be touched by God. One thing that I looked up that I found interesting is the word for healed or get well in verse 23, where Jairus is saying, come and heal my daughter. And also 28, if I just touch his clothes, I'll be healed. The Greek word, because the Bible wasn't written in English, this part was written in Greek. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. Sozo.
Sozo.
Yeah, which means to be saved. So to be healed is also to be saved. It's actually the same word that is used when the angel is talking to Joseph, Matthew chapter 1. And the angel says, she, Mary, will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins.
So heal people from their sins,
Yeah.
save people from their sins.
Yeah. So when Jesus says in verse 34, your faith has healed you, he's basically saying your faith has saved you. I don't know whether that just means purely physically or if there's a spiritual aspect to it as well. We saw in the last passage that we read last week how Jesus healed the paralyzed man physically, but he also forgave his sins.
Yeah. So, daughter, your faith has healed.
Yes.
Is you have been saved.
Yes.
As well. Yeah. So Jesus, it says in verse 30, once Jesus realised that the power had gone from him, so he knew that the woman had touched him.
Which is quite impressive. Have you ever been pickpocketed?
Don't think so.
No.
I
don't think I have either.
You've pickpocketed me?
But like the whole point of pickpocketing is like you can't feel it if you've been pickpocketed because they're so clever with it. She just touched his cloak. Imagine it sort of billowing around.
Yeah, and with all the crowds there as well, with all those people. And the disciples question that as well. They say, well, there's all these people around, and yet you can ask who touched me.
Yeah.
But Jesus knows. And should we go on to the next bit?
Yeah, go on then.
So we've got Jairus. He's on his way to Jairus, as we said. But someone comes up to Jairus, says, your daughter is dead. Why bother the teacher anymore?
Yeah. So en route, the daughter's died. So then people are thinking, right, there's no hope now. That's it.
But Jesus then says, don't be afraid, just believe. Which in other words is, don't worry, trust me, I've got this, don't worry. So people are probably thinking, well, we trusted you to heal people, but the daughter's dead now.
This is another level.
Yeah, this is next level. Again, Jesus goes and he sees people crying and wailing, and he's going, well, what's going on? Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead but asleep.
Yeah.
And people are laughing at him. People are thinking, well, no, she is dead.
Yeah. Jesus knows that he's about to bring her back to life. Yeah. So he's not worried.
So then Jesus goes, raises her from the dead.
Yeah.
And immediately she stands up, walks around. Everyone completely astonished is the words he used there.
Both of the stories, I've just noticed this, it's immediately, isn't it? Jesus' power is immediate. Mm-hmm. There's no, waiting around or whatever.
And even at the point in this second one, even at the point where people, they might have trusted him before with the healing because they knew it had been done before. But with this, he hadn't raised anyone from the dead. Yeah. They're probably thinking this isn't something he can do.
Yeah, that's true.
They didn't trust him.
They're both interesting stories, actually, aren't they? Because even with the woman who touched his cloak, it wasn't like he had intended to heal her. Yeah. He didn't know who touched his cloak. Both of these stories are like a new version, a new evolution, if you like, of Jesus' healing power.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then the last sentence, it says, he gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this. Now, why do you think he told people not to share this?
So if you imagine there's this guy going around who's identifying himself with God, who's performing miracles, teaching and all this sort of thing, and people were identifying him with other old prophets from the Old Testament. So a lot of people were saying, is this Elijah, or is this John the Baptist, or is this whoever? So I wonder if partly it's to prevent incorrect theories like that being spread, because he is not any of those people. He is Jesus, and he's got his own mission. But I think also it's probably just a practical thing as well of, the more people hear about him, especially if you think about the star attraction of being able to resurrect someone from the dead. Yeah. That's a Jerusalem's Got Talent moment now, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So I think he's partly being like, don't spread this about too much, because the more people hear about me, the more the crowds are going to grow. Yeah. And practically, I'm not going to be able to travel where I need to travel and do the stuff that I want to do, because I'll be surrounded by people all the time. But also, this is not my...
Yeah, he didn't come down just to raise everyone from the dead. He was dying.
Exactly. Yeah. He's got a broader purpose.
Nice. So we've looked through there. We've got people trusting Jesus to heal.
Yes.
People not trusting him to raise people from the dead, and him doing it. And his trust with the disciples as well.
Yeah. There are 4 particular things you could look at this passage through these lenses. The first, there is no limit to the power of God, which we see, because when we thought he could only heal a hand or a paralyzed body, he can actually heal without even doing it intentionally, deliberately, and B, can heal someone from death, bring someone back to life. So there's no limit, but also to come with expectations. So if you think about Jairus and the bleeding woman, they came seeking a miracle and they got a miracle. They had to trust that there was some hope in Jesus. So they had some expectation. But then also the third is that Jesus welcomes us in our unclean state. So literally with these two, the bleeding woman and the dead girl, but even with us, because none of us are perfect, none of us are sinless or pure, and yet Jesus still reaches out a hand to us too. The fourth one is to think about how can we seek Jesus with all of our heart. That phrase that you're talking about, don't worry, just believe. How do you do that?
Yeah, so that's our task for this week then, to spend some time reflecting, thinking of those times that we've got coming up, or difficult situations we're in, where we can just leave them with God, where we can put our whole trust in Him. So spend some time reflecting on those times for us to trust in God.
That's good.
When even though it might be like, oh well, I don't know if God can do this, but as we've heard today, God's power has no limits.
Yeah.
Do you want to pray to finish?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, thank you, Jesus, for who you are. And we do thank you, Lord, that you are a miracle worker and you can work miracles in our lives even today. But Lord, I just pray that you would particularly help us to trust in you, to offer up areas of our lives to you. Help us to trust your plan for our lives and to trust that you're with us. So Lord, we thank you that we can get to know you better and learn about you. Show us what it means to trust you. Amen.
Amen. Lovely.
Lovely.
Right. Next time, what's happening?
Next time, a story that equips.
Okay. All right.
Get ready to be equipped.
Have to find 5 facts about equipping things, I think. Right.
Lovely.
Let's go equip myself with some food because I'm hungry.
Oh, I'm hungry too.
Perfect. See you soon.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye-bye.